This will be moderated by none other than Verner Ayukegba. I'm going to try and get it right. So please, a round of applause for Verner as he makes his way to stage. He will be joined by Jassim Alshirawi, welcoming back Jassim on stage, Pedro Miras on stage, His Excellency Gabriel Mbaga Obiang Lima, and the last seat will be taken up by Vibhuti Jain. So a round of applause, please, as Vibhuti also makes her way now on stage.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Please be seated. I guess we're the last panel for this leadership forum, and I have an amazing panel here with me, and I look forward to an amazing conversation. I know, Vibhuti, you just got off the plane, so thank you so very much for being able to make it here. Excellency, great to see you again. Excellency SG, great to see you, as well as Pedro, really nice to see you. Well, the topic for today's conversation is really how G20 nations can work together with global organizations to support Africa's investment environment. Now, I'm going to admit, I was talking with some of the panelists earlier, and it's not the way I would frame it, because typically I would be saying it's not for African nations to be looking at G20 nations. Quite often when people frame these kinds of conversations, and people think about, help support, it's as if we're looking at, bags of cash being carried over. But that's not the way we at the African Energy Chamber see it. It's ultimately around a lot of the work and the collaboration that we see. And I think I'm going to start with Vibhuti on this. And I know with the DFC, there are a lot of projects that you do. You support the U.S. government in that sense in terms of implementing a lot of U.S. government policy. When you look at engagement and interaction with African nations, how practically does the DFC approach this in this new era?
So I think, Verner, as you noted, I think our lens is very much, we are following the African countries. So we are really looking to host countries to tell us these are our priorities. This is the type of development we are prioritizing in our country, and then we follow the private sector where there are opportunities through tender, through directly negotiated projects, and provide patient capital. We're very proud to have a vast investment portfolio in Africa. We have over $13 billion invested across different sectors, and energy is one of our largest sectors of investment. Great example of a recent project where we followed this approach is we recently closed a combined cycle gas project in Sierra Leone called Nant Energy that involves investment by Energy, a subsidiary of Harith Investment Partners, a South African asset manager, that involves investment by the ECOWAS International Bank for Development, and that involved close partnership with the government of Sierra Leone to articulate their priorities. And this project, once fully operational, will double energy capacity in Sierra Leone. So it's a win-win for all. We have US involvement, the support of the host country, and multilateral involvement through EBID.
But what I hear really from what you're saying is private sector, private sector, private sector. So you're really looking to anchor private sector capital into some of those projects. Is there a focus or some kind of percentage around foreign capital coming from outside, or Sierra Leone private sector capital as well?
It can be either. We require a private sector nexus to engage because that is our mandate. Effectively, we are trying to mobilize private capital in all of our projects. It doesn't need to be from the US. We have a preference for US involvement, but it doesn't need to be Sierra Leonean or American. No. It just needs to be a partner whom we see a good collaboration potential and working relationship with.
Okay, thank you. Excellency, let me come to you and the IEF. Congratulations, the IEF is a lot in the news in terms of driving a lot of initiatives. One of the much younger organizations in the space. Nevertheless, we do hear a lot about the IEF, so that's also thanks very much to your team and yourself. And when you look at what the IEF is trying to do, what kind of policy reforms are you working together with African governments on, or would you like to engage on a policy perspective when we look at helping to attract capital into African markets, African energy markets?
Well, thank you very much, Verner. Well, first, we're not that young. We are like over 30 years old organization. Yeah. We started in the early 90s, but we had a home which is hosted by the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and Riyadh since the early 2000s, actually 2003. We are intergovernmental organizations. We have nearly 70 member countries. Approximately half of the African countries are members within our organization. I would go back to the issue I raised in my welcome speech about energy poverty. And I think this is a very important issue that we have to work on in Africa. And I welcome the renewed attention by our colleagues in the IEA and OPEC on the attention to energy access and affordability, and also in order to reduce emissions. And in particular, the role of the LPG in order to reduce emissions and improve the conditions for clean cooking in the continent. By the way, we have a trilateral work program with the IEA and OPEC where we hold a number of events. One of the events that we hold generally in February in Riyadh, and it is the Symposium on Energy Outlooks, where we along with our partners IEA and OPEC, they present their energy outlooks for the future with other as well.
Hopefully we wouldn't be having multiple different outlooks.
Yes, scenarios, they present them. And also other organizations present their scenarios. And those meetings enable more understanding between these organizations in order closer divergence toward more common solutions. We also have other symposiums that we hold with our partners like OPEC that we hold generally in April, the physical and financial markets workshops in Vienna, and we also in October, on the 8th of October, we're going to have one in Paris hosted by the IEA on the gas and coal markets.
And just to push you a little bit on that, one of the issues we have with scenarios is that quite often we're not very sure that the African reality is very much well mirrored in some of those scenarios. And there are many challenges and many reasons from that data access and all of that. What is the sense that you have as you are seeing a lot of these scenarios come onto play?
Yeah, see, we produce a report, a monthly report on the comparative analysis of these scenarios. And every year also we produce a more comprehensive report on the scenarios. And we see that there is more convergence and more, there was a kind of polarization between different organizations. But with those meetings that we hold together, I think we're getting closer understanding between the parties, and we're trying to bring together more common solutions. We had one initiative that we actually conducted with our partners, S&P Global Commodities Insights. It's called GESI, Global Energy Solutions Initiatives, where we held a number of dialogues in Asia, Africa, Europe, the Americas, the Middle East, and we included a lot of experts, and the outcome of this initiative indicated that we must have multi-dimensional, multilateral pathways for energy transition.
Yeah.
So each countries have to have their own realities, their own priorities. So we cannot have just one linear pathway toward energy transition.
Thank you. Pedro, let me come to you from where you sit, interaction and engagement with multiple African countries in that sense. What is your sense around the harmonization, for example, of standards in and around that, and being able to move together lockstep to be able to ensure that we can have things like training, capacity building, and all of that. That really comes to be able to help improve the operating environment.
Okay, good morning. Thank you for the organizer for inviting me to be here. This is a key question because it's clear that this area, Africa, needs more investments. It's clear. We have a look at the numbers. No, the population is around 20% of the world population, and however, the consumption is around 3% of the energy consumption. So that it's clear that we need more investments here, and the companies are those that have to invest.
Yeah.
So what is the real way to make those companies to be much more engaged in investments here? In my opinion, there are two things that are very important. The first one is to have a very good regulatory framework. It is important to work all over the countries, not only in Africa, but everywhere. Please try to have a good regulatory framework, a regulation that could make the investments for the companies easy, transparent, and a good framework, no? Good things that, because this is the way that the companies are happy to put the money. No? And the second is very good, very important to have to follow the best compliance rules. It is important that in the framework in which those companies are investing, the compliance rules will be very clear because many companies have a lot of limitations and they have not a good framework, either in regulation, not in framework. So this is what will make the companies to be confident to put the money in every part of the world. And I think that it is important to bear this in mind. If we have those things, I'm sure that the money will come here and the companies will be much more happy to be investing here because it's real necessity in this continent.
Good, thank you. Your Excellency, Gabriel, he was talking about operating environment. You spent quite some time improving the operating environment in your own country when you were there. But beyond that, we're looking ultimately at being able to attract finance dollars into these individual African countries. What do African countries need to do differently, better? Not just wait for G20 countries. What do they need to be doing to be able to ensure an even greater flow because the demand is ultimately there?
Okay, first of all, Vernon, thank you for the question, and I want to take the opportunity to thank the organizer for inviting me. And I think one of the critical things that sometimes we forget is that we do need to prepare ourselves. When I say prepare ourselves, we're talking about regularity, we need to be able to prepare when we are going to sell our project, when we are going to sell our countries. That's what I say. We think that, the financiers will come and they will like us because we are peaceful, because we are a country, but it doesn't work like that. And investors is looking at your numbers. They need to make sure that your bank are real. You need to make sure that you have the right contracts, the right regulations, and at the same time that you go in the different forums that when they check the data that you have in country are the same one. This is why those approach with institutions like the IMF, World Bank, the rest are very important because they don't always come to see you. They do their due diligence before see you, and then they go see you to see if what you're going to say is true or not. Now, the demand is there. I mean, everybody who have worked in Africa recognize almost 99% of the African projects are profitable. Now, the problem is how they elaborate the project. And that's what really creates a problem. And this is why it's very important issues like project management, the rest, because a lot of the projects, when are done, you have what the companies want, but sometimes they forget what the country wants. And you need to be able to work together so you know from day one what each one of the parties need to do, what's the project going, and knowing and monitor to know if a project is going correctly or not, and the reason why you're doing it. I'll give you the best example. In Equatorial Guinea, we built the fastest built LNG plant in the world. And the only reason we did it is because there was a gap regarding the demand of gas, and it was a gap for 2 years. I think it was a couple of plants in Qatar or the rest that we didn't. And then we realized that by investing immediately in an LNG plant, and then we finish, we will actually be starting our projects when there were going to be a huge demand. And I have to tell you, at that moment, when we started the project, the LNG was being sold at $3, $4 BTU in the US. When we finished, we were selling it at $11 or $13 BTU in Japan. So again, we understood that the project needed to start, and we engaged all the parties, from the government, the president, the ministers, and the banks, and even clearly customs, the rest, because they create a lot of problems too. But one of the critical things to be able to do that is you need to prepare yourself to be able to attract those investors.
So, I mean, let me just move to Vibhuti. In practical terms, I'm hearing here, you know, both the government and you know, the investor needs to be aligned. That is not always an easy thing to be able to achieve. So how do you navigate that, you know, given that, you know, you might have soft dollars in that sense coming from the DFC, but other banks and other investors but have much more aggressive sort of like return stand. How does one navigate that, you know, together with what Minister Gabriel was saying in terms of ensuring that the government also ultimately has something out of that investment?
I mean, I think that's a conversation that needs to happen early on in the project before we even commit to investing. We need to meet with the ministries. We need to meet with, you know, whoever on the public sector side is ultimately awarding, in our case, because we're working with IPPs, awarding a concession and granting the licenses and regulating the project. We need to understand what are their priorities, how are they viewing this particular project or investment in light with their national priorities, how are we allocating risk. You know, it's not feasible for one party to absorb all the risk associated with a project, and so it's that fair apportionment, ensuring that all sides have good legal counsel so the agreements are clear, they're fair. And for us, I think it's about viewing the investment as part of a broader relationship with the host country. So, you know, you asked about if one particular investor is more aggressive than another, how do we approach things in a with a unified voice? And what we've actually found is when we're investing in emerging markets or frontier markets, most often the commercial investors will come to us and say, because you are also representing your host country government, can you help us with a diplomatic channel for delivering a message? So we haven't necessarily had the experience of other investors trying to run ahead of us or be more aggressive. So that hasn't necessarily been a problem.
Okay. Excellency, looking at your multiple members, how do you go about promoting knowledge sharing within the organization, in that sense, knowledge transfer, where some of your members could learn ultimately from others?
Yes, thank you. We, as part of that aspect, you know, we have an industry and advisory council where we have companies that are in the energy spectrum that ranges, you know, because our mandate covers not only oil and gas, but covers all forms of energy, including renewables, nuclear, and also service companies. So we have over 30 companies so far as members of our industry advisory council, where they meet with public officials and with representatives of member countries, and they engage in discussions on the topics that are of importance to the energy sector, and including decarbonization, critical minerals, and other important issues. And they also bring in new technologies and innovation, and that brings in, you know, more knowledge sharing, best practices, and viable solutions to the energy challenges.
That is quite interesting in that sense. Similar, I know WPC has driven a number of initiatives around getting much more young people, many more increasing diversity in the energy space. How are you looking going forwards as we continue to be in a very much changing energy environment, the role of AI and all of it? How are you looking to drive those same concerns in a very much changing?
Okay, you know that our organization was created in 1933.
Yes.
So we have a long history
Correct.
moving towards because we have a responsibility. The responsibility is to energize all the world.
Yeah.
And not to, and so we have to look at different possibilities. No, there are no good or bad or good energies. There are energies that are good in somewhere are not so good in other parts of the world. So that means that we have a very broad point of view, no? And this is part of our aim, no? Just to continue creating a good atmosphere for dialogue.
Yeah.
Dialogue is very key for us. You know that we organize the Congress every 2 years. Next one is going to be in Riyadh. And we will welcome all the opinions all over the world to discuss about the future of energy without any limitation. And this is the best that we contribute to that. And in this regard, we are also worried about diversity. We are also worried about young professionals. And because we understand that this is a question to attract the best talent to our industry. In several parts of the world, probably not in Africa, but in several parts of the world, many young professionals don't want to work in the oil and gas sector because they understand that it's something old-fashioned or very difficult to understand. Correct. But we have to continue pushing that this is a good industry, that we have a responsibility, this to energize the world. And there are around, as I think Mr. Jassim says before, 700 billion people that have no access to energy. Yeah. And we have to provide this energy. Right. So this is our aim, and we are going to continue fostering the dialogue between everyone in order to understand that we have a responsibility we have to cover.
Good. One last one for Minister Gabriel. In that sense, I know you've been advising a couple of major organizations since you left government, as well as a number of really big companies that are looking at opportunities in Africa. And what does it take in this environment now to get a project done?
Okay. The first one is to understand what each one of the country wants. And to be able to get this, and this is sometimes difficult because you go to the country and you talk with a lot of people. And usually the people that you speak are not the decision makers. So you need to go all the way to the top. You need to go to the decision makers from the president. It could be the Minister of Finance, the critical ones, to understand what is the priority. Now, clearly, they are not going to be talking about the project. They're going to be talking about the priorities. And it has to be very simple. The priorities usually are very clear. We want electricity, we want jobs, and we want industries. Once you know what that politician wants, that's when you can develop. This is where you can say, okay, for me to be able to give you more electricity, I need to do this. For me to be able to create more jobs, I need to do this. And then the politician will know, if I want to be voted in the next election, I need to make sure that these projects are done. So clearly it's very important to understand the two worlds. You have to understand the political world, and their language is much different than the bankers' world, and then it's much different than the operators' one. So the biggest advantage of, I would say, consultants like us, who have been former ministers, is that we have deal with all of them. We have deal with the presidents, we have deal with the bankers, we have done with the operators. So we know what each one of the ticks. Sometimes the operators and the bankers don't want to talk about politics. Yeah. So you don't talk about politics with them. And then you know what politics you talk with the government. But once you align all of them, you have to understand, because you can present a beautiful $1 billion project to the president, and he's looking like you, thinking like, oh, he liked the project. But he's thinking, you know, you finish, what is this? Does it create jobs? It's going to give us money. So you need to make sure that you go straight to the point, tell them what he wants to hear, and clearly the more important one, we want electricity, we want to process our products, and we want to create jobs. So
Okay.
anything like that can be done. So it's important to know the language of each one of the parties.
Yeah.
At good prices.
Exactly.
Good prices.
Yes, of course, ST.
Yeah, I'm just pleased to announce that we're going to have a new member joining our IEF family
Amazing.
from Africa. Sierra Leone, we're going to celebrate their joining the IEF
Awesome.
hopefully tomorrow. And I take this platform as a call to more countries in Africa to join us, not only countries as member country, but also even the companies
Yes.
and industry to join our IAC, the Industry Advisory Council. We want to give as a priority to IEF and to me personally, we want to give Africa a voice
Yes.
within the energy community, and we want to amplify their requirements, their needs, their challenges, and the opportunities for Africa within the global dialogue.
So thank you very much, Excellency. I think congratulations to Sierra Leone as well as to the IAF for agreeing on this particular new membership. One final word, Vibhuti, maybe before we leave. What do we need to do? Very shortly, 1 minute. What do we need to do to get more US dollars into the continent? 30 seconds on that one. I can
Oh,
see
well,
it.
that's a very big question.
Yeah.
Look, I think have more, have the governments, as His Excellency was saying, have the governments tell the private sector, the businesses,
Yes.
this is what we want, this is our priority, and then the investment will follow. We will follow U.S. businesses, we will follow international companies, we will follow, world-class EPCs. So I think the voice and the vision needs to come from the countries themselves.
Okay, thank you so very much for that last word. Thank you very much to my panel for being here, and thank you very much, listeners, for being an amazing crowd. Thank you.
Thank you.